Hey, good afternoon. We're live, Brian.
Good afternoon. It is absolutely gorgeous today. Almost summerish. It's like mid 80s.
86. Yeah, my forecast for where we live said possibly 90.
Wow.
Yeah, and
For April, that's hot.
oh gosh, yeah, we were joking. Even June, that's hot. June doesn't usually get
No,
very hot. It's July and August, but yeah, and what a couple of weeks ago there was some snow.
no. Yeah, weird. But I'm enjoying it. I'm being able to talk to you outside on my patio and just loving it. I saw a bumblebee the other day. I love bumblebees. I haven't seen a bumblebee in years.
Oh wow.
I know. So it's really, I don't know. I've always liked bumblebees. I mean, honeybees are nice too, but it's yellow jackets I don't like. But
Well, sure. No,
anyway,
I love just the way that those big fluffy guys just float around, completely
they do
defying science. So if you want proof that God exists, bumblebees.
bumblebees, and they always. I don't know if it's true, but I've always thought of them as being a lot less aggressive. So they're just fun to look at, and they're not going to hurt you.
Right, right. The only way they'll hurt you is if you really go out of your way. I mean,
Right.
yeah, it's like Milo, our dog. I mean, I don't know what you would have to do to get Milo to bite you, but you'd have to be really a terrible person to get that to work. So,
Yeah. So, anyways, so that's what's going on today, and otherwise, looking forward to a Sunday and talking with you today. So, suppose we could talk about Sunday or anything else you want to talk about.
I mean, I could come up with a lot of different things. I, on a day like today, talking about the weather just seems fantastic. Because I was thinking the other day how, as I was walking in the church on Sunday, how when somebody asks how you are, that we kind of respond in different ways. Um,
Hmm?
and for some people, it's great, thanks, and that may or may not reflect truth. It's just how they respond.
Right.
And I struggle with that question, as you're well aware, because there's part of me
Hmm.
that wants to be really reflective and go, well, how am I? And then to give an
Hmm.
honest answer. And I have found that more recently, my response when somebody says, how are you? Whether it's a meeting or for work or at church or whatever, I immediately go to what's the weather like and responding about the weather. Um, it did make me think about our own authenticity with each other and how that is maybe trial ground for being authentic outside in our relationships outside
Hmm.
the church. But that has nothing to do with Sunday. It was just something that I was really contemplating Sunday morning when I thought about my own lack of authenticity in some cases. And I feel like I'm pretty open, but obviously there's still walls that I'm willing to put up there for the sake of comfort.
You went deep, man. When I think of that topic, I just go. My thought is most people use that phrase to simply say hello, hi, I care about you, and I could say hi, hope you're doing good, move on. Right? They don't really want an answer.
Yeah.
Most people, it's just a greeting. That's it. It's more than an actual question. It's just an idiom. So
And I should probably interpret it that way, as a because there's a tone, right? We can take, "Hey, how you doing?" means, "Hi," but
that's
"Hey,
it.
how are you doing?"
Two
is
different questions.
is like I really want an answer from you, if you're willing to share with me. You know, um, in German, there's a phrase that is no, I can't remember the phrase. Forget it. We'll just let it go. But they say "Gruß Gott," which is greetings from God, in southern
Huh?
Germany, which I think is very cool. Um,
Yeah.
but there's another one that's like, "How goes it?" Wie geht's? That's what it is. Wie geht's? How goes it? And it's the same thing. Like,
Same thing.
how you doing? Wie geht's?
I do.
Yeah, gut, danke. Move on. I don't expect a legitimate answer.
A modern blessing. Like, they're asking a question, but they're not asking a question. Most people are not asking a question.
Right.
They're just, hopefully you're doing well. I don't really have time or interest to really know all the details of your life, but hopefully you're doing well.
Yeah.
Yeah. But authenticity, it's always interesting to flip that on people and actually start answering the question. I think a lot of people would go, I really didn't want to know.
Well, sure. Yeah. No. And I get that, actually. I mean, as in get it, understand it, but get it as in when I do try to give people an authentic answer to that, there's occasionally a like, oh gosh, okay, you're giving me a lot more than I really wanted here.
Yeah.
And for some people, it's really uncomfortable. And for other people, it's really flattering. Like, oh gosh, I mean, you trust me enough to share, or
the circumstance, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, the intricacies of human communication. Yeah, I don't even know the right word. There's little phrases we use. There's a word for that. What is that word, Kelly? Well, you got me off on a tangent. What's that phrase when we use? What is it?
You said idioms.
Is it an idiom? I don't know if that's the right word.
I'm going to look it up. A group of words established by usage as having a meaning not deducible from those of individual words. Yeah, that's not correct.
Yeah. Might be euphemisms, I don't know. Anyways, just the little ways that we use phrases that don't necessarily mean what we mean they mean. But the words actually do it all the time. And it's not just Americans. Everybody does it all the time, it makes biblical interpretational interesting, because sometimes the words don't mean what you think they mean. There's more there. Anyways.
Yeah. I think expression is the easiest one. It's just an expression.
Yeah, there you go. There we go.
Because euphemism is a substitute for something harsh or blunt that provides a softer delivery.
Right.
And I just looked it up. That's the only reason I know that.
Back, going to the bathroom, or something that's inappropriate.
I'm gonna go use the facilities. That's my euphemism for that. Anyway, that was my little distraction moment. I just wanted to share that, because I want people to know when they ask me, how are you doing, that there's this internal struggle that's going on in my brain. That's like, should I really share? Do we have time for this? Or is it just a polite, gosh, it's good to see you.
Right.
And I should interpret it that way.
Depending on the tone, depending on the circumstance.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Well, let's talk about the sermon. We're 10 minutes in.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, the basic point is that we as Christians are part of a group, and it's not a two-step process as a lot of people think. So, becoming a Christian is not a two-step process, where step one is that you establish a personal relationship with Jesus. Step two is then you join a church. What Paul is doing is saying, no, it's one piece. To become a Christian is to become part of a church, a body, a family, a group, and they're just two sides of the same thing. So we in modern times, particularly in the West, because we're so extremely individualistic, we look at ourselves as individual people more than we see ourselves as a group. And so, well, of course, salvation is an individual thing. Well, that's not exactly how the Bible sees it. And it's certainly not the point in this text, that we're part of God's people. So that Abraham is our forefather. We're part of his family. So that's kind of the point.
Yeah, it does remind me of a couple of just quick things. I remember as a teenager who felt reasonably strong in his faith, had knowledge and had a prayer life and study and that kind of stuff. I remember I went to a church dance, and I think I was maybe 15 years old or something like that. And I'm sorry, I'm getting a phone call from my mom's best friend. So I'll have to message her just because my mom's
Yeah.
having some health issues, but I'll follow up with her. But anyway, I remember having this conversation with this young woman who asked me to dance, and somehow we got on the subject of faith. And by the way, it was an LDS church dance because I was part of an LDS scout troop, so there was lots of like. Anyway, this young woman was not LDS, neither was I, and she was talking about her faith and like her church is the forest and being by herself, and seeing God in the forest, and didn't believe in being that you had to be a part of a community of faith to be a Christ follower, and she didn't use those terms, but it was just, there was a part of me that's like, well, how valid is that? Because I know there's like personal faith, but can you have, and this is my question to you is, we're part of a family. So can we legitimately have faith, to be a Christ follower without being part of a community of Christ?
Again, it depends. Just going back to our beginning question, I think it depends on how you mean that. I mean, can you practice your faith and not go to church? Well, yes. There's pieces you're missing. There's commands, frankly, you're not obeying. Yeah. There's huge pieces to your faith that's missing. So in that sense, well, yes, you can be an individual Christian in that sense, But I think it's like, as I'm understanding it, it's not a choice whether or not you're part of a family when you become a believer. It is, right? Because it is what it is that you're doing. That is what you're doing. You are becoming a family. You are joining that. Because theologians talk about two different types of the church in two different ways. There's the visible church and there's the invisible. There's the local church and then there's the universal church. There's the church that is the actual people who belong to Jesus, who are part of God's faith, all over the world, and that Jesus knows are really his. And then in each individual church or denomination, there's a mixture. So there are some who are and some who are not. And it depends on their individual responses to Jesus. And so there's the local visible church. Do you need to be a part of that? Well, you should. But just by becoming a Christian, you're a part of the bigger community, whether you want it or not. That's just, by definition, that's what you are. Does that make sense?
I'm going to restate it, at least the way I.
Please.
If my family lives in Oregon, but I live in North Carolina, and my family gets together for Thanksgiving and I can't get there, I'm still part of that family.
Well, yeah.
Right.
Right.
And that's kind of the way I interpret that is, that whether you are interested or able or whatever to connect, in a practical way, let's say you are still effectively a member of the family. So
right.
You're not
exactly.
You're not avoiding that element of it.
Right. And there are times where, if we just talk on and I love your analogy, just a regular family. I mean, people choose not to associate with their family for a variety of reasons. Some of them are legitimate and some of them aren't. Right. Because of hurt or pain or there are misunderstandings or whatever it is, or distance. They can't or won't. Right. But that doesn't make them not family. They still are family. And of course, the ideal is that that these misunderstandings and hurts would be evened out and ironed out, and you would be able to get home for Christmas. You'd be able to get home for Thanksgiving, because nothing's better than being home with family. So that's the ideal, And if it's not happening, that's a good, need to figure that out. So yeah.
Well, and it brings kind of the next level to this for me, which this is something that I struggle with, and I've explained it to people at church too, is that I definitely find myself struggling with, and I wouldn't say it's representative in our church community, but the broader church community, where I struggle to want to be a part or to be considered part of, like the American Christian church. I really struggle with that. It's not impacting how I feel about Christ or kind of the foundation of my faith. But I find myself trying to resist the urge to pull away to some degree,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
one of the things that I have talked to Vanessa about, as a matter of fact, is, and it's something that in the challenges that you and I have had as we have been leaders at the church, there's definitely times that things have been so hard that it's like, wouldn't it just be easier to go, right? Are we really going to affect change? But if it's family and you love them and you care enough, if you have the ability and it's not harmful to you, shouldn't you engage? Because change isn't going to come by running away. And I say that, and I don't want to be misinterpreted. It's Jesus could have just walked away from people, and instead of engaging with them, he could have ignored people that were sinners,
Yeah.
or whether they were the hypocrites or whether they were the tax collectors, or whatever, but you don't affect change by walking away from that. So that's just something I've struggled with. So I just wanted to share that with you, and which you're already aware.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, I was thinking about that type of concern over the last week with this. And your first point before this, if I could kind of put it in one sense, is I don't want people to feel shame if they can't be together with other believers.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, sometimes you can't. And sometimes, like with with COVID stuff, it's like they just didn't feel like they could. And okay, that's fine. I get it. The flip side of it, though, is although you can choose not to associate with Christians. One of the points I think I'm hearing in this is, but you still can't divorce yourself from the identity, even if you want to. They are your family. Mm-hmm. Whether you like it or not, you are an American Christian. And so what are you going to do with that? You can either say, no, I'm not. or as you just put it, you can work to make change. And that's only going to really happen at a local level. Because, it's the old adage, if you find a perfect church, don't join it, because you're going to ruin it.
Right.
That's right. If the church is a bunch of hypocrites, well, go ahead and join it, because there's room for one more. Right. We all have ways that we're not right. And you're right. Some local churches, they don't want to change. They don't want to grow. And then maybe you need to, for your own self-edification, maybe for your peace of mind, or just a better effective use of your energies, go to a place that's willing to grow and become more Christ-like. Sure, I can get all that. But I think that to put it in another way, it's like I can't divorce from myself from the fact that I'm white. I am, mm-hmm. Whether I want to be or not, whether I'm not happy with how some white people act, I still am. And there's nothing I can do to undo that. I just am. It's part of my identity. So.
Yeah, I think it also, understanding who you are helps you to engage with other folks. Like I mentioned a couple weeks ago, the orthodontist office, right? The conversation I had with that young woman who was, working through some spiritual trauma, some hurt that
Yeah.
by the church, and being able to engage in conversations with folks, knowing, hey, I'm kind of representative in many ways of the body that hurt you,
Right.
I hope you don't see me as one of those people, like directly, but knowing that I am part of a body that, in the gross sense, hurt you, means
Right.
that I can have a conversation with you that hopefully renders a more positive outcome or outlook. That
Right.
here I am as an unofficial representative of crummy people that thoughtlessly hurt you, but I'm a church
Right.
leader, and church leaders hurt you, and I'm really
Yeah.
sorry about that. Can I change what happened? I can't. Can I change the hearts of the people that are doing that? Maybe through relationship and time, and through one small change made by millions of people with hearts for Christ.
And your point of, I'm sorry that hurts you. It's, again, if you accept that that is your group, when they do something that you don't like, that is wrong, there's an opportunity, a space, maybe even a responsibility
Mm-hmm.
for corporate confession, of saying, as someone who is a part of that group, I'm sorry for what my group has done to you. Because it is there is a group identity.
Yeah.
And so saying, like that one on the campus, that campus,
Blue like jazz.
you know what I'm talking.
Yeah.
Yeah, where he's confessing. It's a confession booth, and it's the Christian confessing sins of the church to non-Christians.
Yeah.
See, that's exactly what he's doing. I'm a Christian. The church has hurt people, so I'm going to confess on behalf of the church.
Yeah. And you can't do that if you are outside of it, or you identify as outside of it. So if I was having that same conversation I did the other day, and I said, you know what, they do suck, right? And like, I'm sorry that happened. They shouldn't have done that to you. It really reinforces division, and it doesn't encourage healing in any way. I mean, some of us just want to be validated, right? We want people to say, I drive an hey, I know that I'm kind of part of this group that represents the issue. Then you're creating a bridge rather than reinforcing that division. And it's, I think, part of this challenge we have in our country right now is we're really ready to jump on board the rock throwing division, as opposed to going, I wonder if this is where they're coming from, or just as to be able to identify, as uncomfortable as it is, with that party.
And some of the pushback I hear from people, Christians, I suppose, or is that, yeah, but I didn't do it. Like,
right.
No, you didn't. But if part of who you are is your identity, and that group is your part of who you are, there is a sense where you can confess that. I mean, this whole group identity thing is a big deal, and we're going to talk about it not this Sunday, to the following. This is what's going on with being in Christ, is that he represents the entire group, right? He didn't sin, but his death on the cross is for my sin. I mean, that's kind of the same thing. He's paying for what I've done. We need to pay for some sins that we may not have done. But if we can at least confess it and say, this is not right, even though and God knows you personally didn't do it. I think that's a very Christ-like thing. And it'll heal, because you're right. A lot of times people just need to know that the people who hurt them know that they hurt them.
Yeah. Yeah. I I think that if it's really easy as somebody who's been hurt to carry around kind of a burden of retribution, like I want to get back,
They
right?
do. Yeah.
Especially if there's no attempt at any kind of reconciliation or penance, let's say, right?
Often
If
happens.
if there's no, and I can fully relate to that as somebody who, in times that I've
Say,
been hurt, my first thought is how do I hurt them back, you know?
right.
But then, forgive the Catholic references, but an act of true contrition, to say, wow, I'm really sorry, at least sets the stage for something that's more, less about, getting even and more about healing and rebuilding relationship. But all
Yeah.
coming back to the idea that how do we act more like a loving family, um, and an accountable family, versus
Mm.
the Shakespearean, Romeo and Juliet, the Capulets, and the whatever the name of the other family is.
And all of this really is difficult to do if you're not part of a local church, because you can't get better at this without practicing it with other believers. The church won't get better if the people who need to speak to the church's faults aren't there. Like, because then who's going to tell them,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's in some ways. I mean, it's important to stay in circumstances that aren't comfortable because you provide a voice that is counter to maybe the toxicity that exists or is growing. And again, I said it earlier, it doesn't mean that you should go to an unsafe place, right?
Right.
And just because, who else is going to do it? I think about Maris and living in New York with sisters and mom, and the sisters aren't being taken care of. Well, who else is going to take care of them if I don't stay? Like, you can't help somebody or somebody's if you yourself are not healthy, if you're not in a good, reasonably safe,
Right.
healthy place,
Right. If it's going to bring you, yeah, yeah. And as long, yes. So you need to be able to not drown in the middle of it, and they need to be willing to change. Of course, the argument then, again, because there's always excuses. It could be
Yeah.
like, well, I can't find a church that I'm going to be safe in. Well, okay. Yeah, I get it. Well, maybe you need to try harder.
Well, and
Or
like
no, I don't know.
no, well, obviously there's not a simple answer. But, as I
No.
was engaging with this young woman, my thought was, do I tell her to just go find a church, or whatever, or do I say, like, you know what? I love my church, and I really would like to believe that it's a place where you could feel safe. And if at some point you feel like you'd like to kind of dip
Yeah.
your toes back in, I'd be happy I'd love it if you would come spend a Sunday and
Yeah.
experience my church. A soft bid, a little invite,
Right. Exactly.
to make it a little easier for her to go, well, maybe I can become part of a community that will help change the story, that it's not just this church.
What would you recommend looking at for someone who is trying to figure out if this is a good church to be at?
Oh gosh, one of the best tools that we have available to us in this modern age is online services.
Mm-hmm.
There were churches that were online even before COVID, that I'd listen to the sermons. I just get an idea what's the teaching like at that church, And there were churches whose teaching I went, ooh, I mean, I get that this guy's telling, I mean, it's factual or whatever. However, I'm uncomfortable, you know.
The tone, the delivery.
Right.
Yeah.
And even it's something about it made me uncomfortable. It doesn't mean it was wrong or even bad, but if I'm trying to feel safe, then just being able to, it takes a lot of courage to walk into a church where you've never been before, whether or not you've suffered any trauma, right? I remember Vanessa and I church shopping and walking in and going, I don't want people to look at me. I want to be anonymous. I just want to understand what this church is about. Maybe I'll go a couple of Sundays, and if it's a good fit, maybe we'll stay for a couple of months. And if it's still a good fit, we'll stay. It'll become our church. But what online gives you that opportunity, and I do hear people push back on that, and like, yeah, it's just an excuse not to go to church.
No, it's the front. Yeah. There's people that go to our church specifically for that.
Yeah.
Multiple.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's what I was thinking about. You gotta listen to the leadership. It's not necessarily the one or two people in the congregation who's maybe crunchy, but a church won't go where the leadership isn't at, right? So if the leadership is, if you feel like they will listen, or they're going to be gracious and they're going to be safe, then I think there's hope for the church to change. And yeah, listening, obviously you need to listen where there's truth, but it's not just whether or not they tell truth. It's the manner in which they present themselves. And yeah, you're right. The online is just such a great option. It's a great option for inviting people to come to church, to say, before you come, why don't you watch a service or two online? It's safe. You know what kind of music you're going to get. You're going to get a sense of the feel of the church. You're going to get a sense of how the pastor preaches, even a sense of the people, because you're going to see some of the people. And so whether they're younger, whether they're older, there's so many. That's the way to go.
Yeah.
So
and again, as you're trying to re-engage with a church community, it's valid to say, I'd like to be in a community with more people my age, or more people of this demographic, or something like that. Because it's, I'm not going to dismiss somebody for coming into a church and going, the carpet smells weird. As silly as that might sound, but that might be something that is enough of a distraction for you,
right,
that you are like, I don't know how comfortable I'll be. Now, some of it's petty, but I'll take anything that will get you to try and to dip your toe in a bit more. Now it's up to your ankle. Yeah. Now it's up to your knee. So don't.
Oh.
Don't be afraid to try some things.
Now, and I have no idea how much time. We probably don't have much left. All of this context, I 100% agree with you. But now, if we flip to the other side, those of you who are stronger in your faith, and it's not whether or not you're going to go to church, don't let things like the smell of the carpet deter you from whether or not you go to the church. And we need to realize that we need to learn and hear from these people who've been hurt.
Yeah.
And we need to
not dismissive.
Aware and not dismissive.
Yeah.
No.
Do you know who Kevin Smith is?
Who?
Kevin Smith, the director. Oh, he did Clerks.
Nope.
Yeah. Anyway, he just yesterday came out with a video talking about some trauma that he experienced as a child that resulted in him creating this larger than life persona, effectively to protect himself. And he was talking about comparing trauma, like he was inpatient mental health for a couple of months because he had a break from reality, and he was there with soldiers with severe PTSD who'd seen friends die, and he's like, well, mine was just people called me fat, and this other thing happened that I'd rather not discuss, but and he's like, trauma is trauma. And so as we who are stronger in faith, who are in a healthy, safe place, we have to be careful not to be comparative and
Right.
dismissive of what somebody has gone through,
Right.
because
Right.
we don't know their journey.
Don't know their journey. We don't know what they're working through. Yeah, and it may, again, it often has nothing to do with you personally. It's just whether how they were raised, or just something that somebody on the internet has said. It's like, yeah, but pain is pain. Everybody's pain is still pain.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
We went really long,
Good.
and I hope people are okay with that. But it's just a
Oh.
worthy discussion. Not
It
really
is.
long, like 10 minutes, but we'll be okay.
Oh, well, thanks for joining us. I love these conversations with Joe. And I'm glad you guys are letting us know that you enjoy them too. And looking forward to seeing people on Sunday.
Me too. And I hope it's almost this beautiful, but maybe not as hot.
Not quite this hot.
Yeah,
So.
I'll be picky. So.
All right. All right. You guys have a great day. See you later.
Take care.